because when I came home after Brother's walk-in closet,
I still got 3 years of parole left.
Hello. Welcome to From Felon to Fabulous. I am Brenda Ringwood. I got some people in the back. First, I'm going to bring up my co-host, Isabel Black. Hey, Izzy, what's up?
I think it was a great day. How was yours?
Oh, my day's always fantastic, but I think Terrence is in the back room. I think he's actually stepped up and showed up today. Looky there. I got to give him a hard time. Hey, Terrence.
Well, hey, it is an unstoppable day. And yes, I decided to step up. You know, spring has sprung, so I decided to have my face in the building with these lovely ladies from Felon to Fabulous, so I can be fabulous too. How you ladies doing?
Fabulous.
Good. And I think our guest today is somebody that you introduced us to.
Absolutely. She is, when you think about fabulous, you think about this lady in spades, and she's got a wonderful story. She is really the epitome of what we talk about when we talk about from felon to fabulous, how you can go from rock bottom to at the top of the mountain. So why don't we just bring her on up and let's get this thing started.
Welcome, Cece.
Welcome, Cece Espew. Hey, Cece, how are you?
I am fabulous. And I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me on your show. Thank you.
Great to have you here. Now, Cece is a 2-time TEDx speaker, and that's just some of the numbers that she has behind her name. And maybe she'll share some more of those with you. But as we always like to do when we talk about From Felon to Fabulous, we know people are used to seeing us in our glory, but they rarely hear our story. And so From Felon to Fabulous, we talk to formerly incarcerated citizens to tell their story of how they have come out and how they are living their lives just like the people that you see on the screen, so that somebody who may still be going through or somebody who just came out can recognize that it doesn't end with that word felon. It's just the beginning of a next never-ending fabulous story if you stick and stay and listen to our guests. So Brenda, why don't you just jump right on into this fabulous show with this fabulous lady?
Well, we were talking yesterday and we were talking about her TEDx experience and just little things. And we were supposed to do this like a year ago, but we just never really connected. And she says, "Oh, I don't like to tell my story. I don't make it a part of what I do." And
How
she
many
was just
times we heard that?
yeah, right. So she was kind of pushing it back. And I just said, I did 4 years in the feds. And she was like, "Oh, we got to talk." So then it was a completely different story because we need to be proud of the people we have become.
Exactly.
We should own where we're at right now because not a lot of people can overcome the challenges that we've overcome. So, Cece, let's start with that.
All right. So let me just say that I was telling my story from 2012 all the way till last year, April in 2023. And then I just had a moment. And unfortunately, that's when Terrence first asked me to come on the show. The story again. And I was like, I am sick of that story. I don't ever want to tell that story again. And so it has literally been a year since the last time I told that story. But here's what happens. And so people see me looking all fabulous, with all these accolades behind my name, and they think that I just roll out of bed, with the purple lipstick on, matching colors. And they don't realize that I struggled for many years. And so that's why when we talked yesterday, I felt it was really important to maybe start telling that story again. So people realize that you just don't roll out of bed looking fabulous.
Absolutely.
It takes some
So
work sometimes.
as we do with all our guests, however much you want to tell of your story or however less you want to tell of your story, but just give us an idea, because as you just alluded to, and on the flip side of it, many people who are coming out, they will look at me, they will look at Bryn, they will look at Izzy, they will look at you, and they will just think you have always had that silver spoon and you've never understood what it was like to go behind the walls of a prison. So why don't you share your story? And then as we move on into the conversation, we'll talk about your fabulousness and your glory.
All right. So let me just say that I was probably one of the only guilty people in prison. Okay. I was guilty, right? But if I tell you what I did, I'm going to have to kill you and go back. So
Yeah, let's not do that.
Let's just skip that part because, in my first TEDx talk, I say that I never, ever, ever, ever intend to go back to prison and to stay. I go back now and I do seminars and workshops. I just don't stay. But
it's not your residence.
Yes, it's not my resident. And here's the thing. Purple is a really good color on me. Orange is not. And I really do not like bologna and cheese on white bread with mayo. So I went into federal prison being very entitled, thinking I was entitled. And what ended up happening after I asked for another color jumpsuit and I refused to eat the bologna and cheese on white bread with mayo, I ended up spending a year in solitary confinement. Because once they put you into solitary confinement, they don't take you out. You just stay there. And I was a little lippy. So, what can I say? So while I was there in solitary confinement, it really gave me a chance to sit down and think and listen. I won't say to myself, but to maybe what was in my heart and to listen to God. And I came out a different person. That year changed me. It definitely changed me. And like I said, I had no intention of going back. So that's it. And I really say that my story really starts April 1st, the day that I left prison. And so, yeah.
It sounds to me like you had an activation while you were in solitary confinement. And that's why we say, our story is our pathway to our purpose. So never shame it, embrace it, love it, and then just be open, right? Make that space for what's not yours anymore to hold on to shed, and what's yours to come to have a place. So
Right.
I think that's beautiful. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. Thank you. I've never heard it referred to as an activation, but you know what? Now that I think about it, it actually was.
Yes, ma'am.
You know, it definitely was. I am I don't know that the person I am today would be the friends with the person I was back then.
Mm.
I would
I,
agree with that.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
same.
I just did an interview with somebody, and I talked about the mindset and the shift that goes on when you're actually in a cell. And I had over 31,000 hours to reevaluate my life. It only takes 10,000 hours to be an expert at something.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's powerful. So
Yeah.
you had a year in solitary. That's
Yeah.
like quadruple anything I did.
You know, I don't even know how I did it. I honestly don't. I We were only allowed to have one book at a time, but one book and a Bible, right? But the guards were, when I tell you they were watching out for me, because in general population they knew, they realized I was a reader. They made everybody get a book from the library, and then every night they would give me that person's book and I would give them back a book. And I just read. And at one
Mhm.
point, when I had read all the books in the library, I got the ABSFAT book, which is the Armed Service Vocational Ability Test or something like that, battery of tests. I did the whole book. I sat down every night and I was doing the problems. And when I did that, then I got the GED book to get your high school diploma. I was already in college, but I was like, okay, to keep my mind active. And I would work all the problems. So the guards actually, they were watching me because they thought I was losing my mind, but I was really trying to keep my mind active. So those three books, the ABSFAB, the GED, and the Bible, I read. And that's
Yeah,
And
that's
it's
good.
funny that you say that because we've had other guests on the show that had a similar, not a similar experience, but the way they, instead of watching the time tick away, that was their outlet. We had one of our guests who is now part of our BTBY family. He went in and someone took him under his wing and started giving
Mhm.
him books. And
good.
now when he talks about all these books that he read in prison that changed his life and activated him on a new destination. And you mentioned earlier that April 1st was your activation, and how poignant that we're coming up close to that date again. What was it about that day that activated Cece?
The guard opened up the gate, and I tell this story in my first TEDx talk. So the guard opens up the gate and says, "You're being released." And I'm like, it's April Fool's. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to sit right here because I know you're playing a joke on me. And he was like, no, you have to leave. It's your time. And so as I step out of my cell, I'm walking down the hallway, it's a long hallway. There's another gate. And as I step through that, there's a guard, a female guard sitting right there. And very pleasantly, she says to me, "See you soon." Now, if you think I got a big afro now, you should have seen me after being in a year in college. I mean, my hair was huge. And I was like, what? Are you coming to Miami? I was so angry. And she goes, no, 96% of all inmates violate their probation within the first year and come back. So that's what she said to me. But what I actually heard from doing the GED book and the ASVAB, because by then I could act like really good. I
Mhm.
understood that I had a 4% chance to
Yes.
succeed. And I don't even know that at that point I understood parole and probation, because I just thought I was going to be in that cell forever. So once I realized I had a 4% chance to succeed and that I didn't have to come back to prison, Oh, that was it. I mean, right away, my mindset changed. I was like, what do I have to do not to come back?
Right.
Yeah.
I love it. So you decided you were going to be a 4%er instead
I'm
of
a
a 96%er.
right,
Okay.
right, yeah.
That's right.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So that started you on a journey. So how did you start acting like a 4%er from that point on? What's some of the things you found yourself doing?
I think I was kind of set up very nicely. I'd been in solitary confinement for a year. It's not like I had friends. I wasn't used to talking to anybody. And so I just continued that when I came home.
Mm.
I didn't have any friends. There was nobody to talk to. There was nobody to hang out with on a corner or anything like that. And that was exactly how I lived my life. And I did my my probation, no problems whatsoever. They called me in every month to test me for drugs. And then some people were getting upset. They were like, "Oh, they're always bringing you in." And I was like, "No, no, no. You don't understand the logic. They have to keep their jobs. They need people like me who they know are never going to pop positive.
Hmm.
So they can call me in all the time. I mean,
Yes.
yeah. So they've got to keep their jobs, and I'm I'm a good number. They could test me anytime, and I would never come up positive.
So
Right.
how long have you been out?
Oh no, I got out 1997.
So
No,
you've been out a long time. You beat those statistics.
right, right. So I don't, honestly, I always say that I'm more than my age, my bank account, my credit score, and the time
Hmm.
I've been out. But, I've been out probably about coming up on 24 years now. I didn't even realize it had been that long.
Nice.
And you've been on the TEDx stage. You help organize TEDx events. You speak. Talk to us about that and how you got involved in it.
So one of the things that I was really always good at was photography. And coming out, we had to get a job within 2 weeks. So imagine, I come out of solitary confinement. I've got to get a job in 2 weeks.
Mm.
I got a job as a server in a restaurant. And I heard the general manager talking about me. He said I was the worst server they had ever seen. And I was like, that's kind of okay because that was not on my bucket list. Be a server. Yeah, be a server or a good server, like never, never. But one of the other servers, she was getting married and they were paying us $2.15 an hour.
Mm.
And he expected me to be good at my job, like, you know. So one of the other servers was getting married and she came to me and she said, Cece, I've got $500. Would you be my wedding photographer?
Wow.
And I could do the math really, really quickly. I was sick. If I give up that job and do one wedding per week at $500,
Yeah.
I'm killing it. So that's what happened. That's how I actually
So
started.
you became self-employed.
And see, this is the beauty about that for me. People only wanted to know that I was going to show up on time, take good pictures, and get them back to them. They never had to know anything about me. And I worked with an event planner for almost, I'm going to say, 2, 3 years. She didn't know anything about me other than I was a great photographer and my phone number and email. Didn't know anything about my background. And then finally, I just started telling people. I was like, hey, this is me, Oh, because by then I was getting $600 for a wedding. I got a little cocky. I was like, hey, by the time I reached $800 for a wedding, $1,000 for a wedding, oh, then I could start choosing my wedding. And I was like, listen, this is me, And so take it or leave it. You want good pictures or you want to be hung up on my background? And
Right. I love
So you
that.
had a mindset shift.
yes.
You
definitely.
became
So was
positive.
photography
You owned it.
Hang on, Terrence. Let me hear what Brenda has to say.
Go ahead.
I was going to say that you owned it. You owned your job, your new life. No longer did the past interfere in that. And you were able to name your price, name your dates, and pick what you wanted out of life. That had to be very rewarding.
Oh, it was. It was. I mean, I was cocky after that. Oh, you should have seen me if I ever went out on a date with a guy. I mean, that's what I led with that. Like, listen, I've been to. I would always say I'm a former U.S. Marine and I'm an ex-offender. You know, so any way you want to go, I can take you. I can like any way you could go. And it's really funny because I've got Napoleon syndrome really bad. I am 5 feet nothing. And with my hair, maybe I'm 5'3", but I'm like 5 foot nothing. So yeah, I don't want to say I had a chip on my shoulder, but I just was not going to let anybody put me down because of it. And so I always told them first. And so my mother would always say, "Don't tell anybody that you've been to prison." And I was like, "Mom, really? When you Google my name, it's the first thing that comes up. You know, it's the first thing that comes up." So yeah.
Yeah, my dad used to tell me that too. Why are you telling your story? It's not everybody's business. And I say, so they can't use it against me later.
Correct. 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 And I will say this, when I was getting ready to do my first TEDx talk, it was on a Friday. And Wednesday, my mother called me and she goes, "My church sisters said that you're going to get on stage and tell our business." I was like, "Listen here, tell me who those church sisters are, because never once did they send any Marlboros or Reds, nothing. So
Book
I don't,
money on your books.
no money on the books. And in prison, cigarettes, that's the currency, you know." And like never, and I don't smoke, but I would have taken a carton of cigarettes. But hey, that's it. I said, nobody ever sent me anything. So I want to know who those church sisters are. And I remember I was driving on the highway and I pulled over and I was crying my eyes out. And I called my cousin Zabe and I said, "What do I do? Do I let this opportunity to be a TEDx speaker pass me by because of my mother and her church sisters? Or do I just get on stage and just be real? Just let it all hang out." And that's what I did.
So you went from felon into this fabulous life as a photographer. Where did this segue? And by the way, I just Googled you, and that's not the first thing that comes up. I just
Not anymore. Not anymore.
not anymore. And that's the beautiful part of it. But how did you segue from being behind the camera into wanting to be on in front of the stage?
That is a beautiful, beautiful story. I was doing an event now back in like right around the early 2000s when cameras were going from digital. We're going from
From
film.
analog?
You're right. From film to digital. I realized that I didn't know anything about that, right? And so I actually took a college class on video and TV production. And I was one of the only women and the only minority woman who could do both photography and video in the Tri-County area. So people kind of had to hire me because I was checking off all the boxes for them.
Right.
I was a military. I was a veteran. I was an ex-offender. I was a woman. I was a minority. The only thing I wasn't was disabled. So people were hiring me like crazy. And I did I was a videographer at an event. And I cannot remember the lady's name. Oh my goodness, she would kill me if she ever sees this, and I couldn't remember her name. But she was a producer from NBC. And she said something on stage. I don't know what it was, but I started laughing. I thought I was laughing silently to myself. And she goes, "Oh my goodness, look at that videographer. The video is going to be shaky." all eyes turned on me, and I was like, oh my goodness, oh my goodness. But later I saw her in the elevator, and she goes, what's your story? And I told her, getting out of prison, yada, yada. She's like, no, step from behind the camera, step in front and tell your story. And that's how I started speaking.
That is a beautiful story.
Yeah.
Yes.
And,
And so now take us on the speaker journey. So you've stepped out in front of it. You didn't start out at TEDx. So where did you start out from your speaking and ultimately now gracing these TEDx stages?
another wonderful story. My life is full of stories. And I almost think I want to change my bio. So instead of it saying former U.S. Marine and two-time TEDx speaker, I think it needs to say master storyteller. It's like a great collection of stories. Felton Showell, who some of you may know, but
We know Felton.
Okay, you know Felton. So he was my coach. And he said to me, Cece, you need to go to Toastmasters because you may not be as good as you think at speaking.
And for the people who may be watching this that don't know what Toastmasters is, go ahead and
I will tell them in a minute. Let me finish this part of the story because it's good. It's juicy. It's juicy. So from around 2012 to maybe 2016, maybe even before that, I was going into prisons and I was talking to the inmates and saying, a lot of the same things that, we're saying here, that when you come home, you can do it. This is what you need to do. This is how you get your records sealed and expunged. Remember, I'm going into prisons and giving this speech like every week.
Wow.
So Felton, I hire Felton as my coach. And he goes, Cece, you might want to go to Toastmasters because you may not be as good as you think. You are talking to a captive audience. They literally cannot get up and leave.
That sounds like Felton.
And I was like, wait a minute. So I may not be as fabulous as I think. He goes, let's just test it out. And so he suggested joining Toastmasters, which is where you go to learn how to speak, and you give speeches, they critique you. In my first speech, which was 4 to 6 minutes, I said 14 ahs and ums, which means that something like every 20-something seconds, I was saying a filler word. And I was like, ooh, maybe I'm not as good as I think. Maybe those guys were really a captive audience and couldn't get up and leave. Yeah. So that's how my speaking career started.
Wow.
We are hanging out with the two-time TEDx speaker, Cece Espew on From Felon to Fabulous. We thank you guys for watching us live or watching us in the replay on E360 TV and on all of our From Felon to Fabulous social media sites. So you have gone from Toastmasters and you've got a whole lot of Toastmaster accolades. Let's just say that. A whole lot of Toastmasters accolades. And I'm so happy that I have been able to experience you in that Toastmasters arena as well. But even for a Toastmaster, now this next level that you have conquered 2 times. TEDx, tell us how that came to be. How did you become a fabulous TEDx speaker?
All right. There was alcohol involved, and I'm not advocating drinking, okay? Right? But one of my best friends, Cassie, and I were down in the Keys, and I know I was drinking. I don't know who else was drinking, but I know I was drinking. And she said, so what's the next step? And I was watching the beautiful sunset. And I was like, I don't know. Let's get on the big stage. I had no idea what the big stage was. And we Googled, TEDx came up, and they were having an event within 2 weeks. And so, of course, TEDx speakers are chosen 6 to 8 months in advance. So there was no hope of me getting on the stage. But I just wanted to know more about it. So I volunteered.
Nice.
Now, remember, I'm a photographer, and I see one of the guys, he's putting up the backdrop stand by himself. And so I go over and I go, would you like some help with that? We start talking. Um, I'm laughing, I'm making jokes, I'm just being myself. Didn't think anything of it. Years later, when I applied to be a TEDx speaker, that same guy, he was on the selection committee.
Wow.
Wow.
He told them, he said, you have got to hear her because she is funny as heck. And so that's when they, put my application and they looked at it and they were like, okay, she's got something here. And the topic that year was reinventing yourself.
Mm.
Yeah, it was like it was made for me. They made the topic for me. But because I was a photographer, everybody thought, it's reinventing yourself as far as
Sure.
go.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the organizer said, don't tell anybody what your speech is about. And when I stood on stage, and let me tell you, I had on like this amazing red dress. My hair was like, I had just bought my shoes and these. I looked hot.
Good.
I looked hot. I knew I looked hot. But anyway, that's a whole nother story. And when I started my speech, and I said, I'm a former U.S. Marine and a former inmate. And I said, wait, somebody out there is thinking I said playmate. I meant inmate. Because the truth of the matter is that when you clean up, when you're not living that lifestyle anymore, most of us clean up very well. And when people look at us, they think that we just roll out of bed looking fabulous, having everything, and they don't realize, what happened in our past. So that was it. That was my journey to the TEDx stage. And that was from the first time I volunteered to now, it's coming up on 9 years.
Awesome. So that takes me into the question that I've been dying to ask, just hearing your beautiful story after story after story. I think you are a master storyteller, and I can't wait to hear more. But I speak a lot of intentionality. So doing life on purpose with purpose is how my life changed, how I reinvented myself. But that takes, it takes something to live life on purpose. So what would you say for the people listening? What is that one thing they could just pivot and change so that they can be in the trajectory of shedding their unserving things and going into what is theirs to do next in life?
I think for me, it was just setting that goal never to go back to prison. And every day it was like, what do I have to do to stay out of prison? And that was it. That was the question I just kept asking myself, what do I have to do not to go back to prison?
But that was the physical, right? That was the physical. Something shifted in April in solitary that changed a mindset that had to stay consistent before you even got to that point. So we're talking to the people, right, that are just coming out and they're looking for direction. So yes, they want to do, nobody wants to go back, but there has to be something that shifts in the mindset first before you dedicate your physical actions to follow suit. What could you say happened in April, that one thing you pivoted and changed that just grew? It was that seed you planted then, and then you stayed consistent and it just grew.
I don't know. Nobody's ever asked me that. And I don't know that I have a good answer for you. I honestly don't. I don't. I almost want to tell you, let's go to commercial break. Let me think about the answer and I'll come back and answer you.
Well, you know what? We can do that because we're going to go to break. So be thinking about that.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Short break. So go ahead and tell us that answer.
Oh my goodness, that was like a really, really short commercial break.
Well, let me see if I give
answer.
a little more, if it could spark something, because what I see right now is a beautifully confident woman. Was that always Cece? Was that Cece before going into to prison? Or was that something that was birthed when you heard that inner voice and you felt you were reading those books and inspiring yourself and empowering yourself with knowledge? Could confidence have maybe blossomed?
It did, but it was more an awareness of my power. It really was.
I love it.
So, I know nobody's asking me, but I'm going to tell you this about my story. So, what was happening in my unit is that I knew some people that were doing things wrong. All right. And instead of telling them that they were doing things wrong, because I'm a math whiz, I said, oh, if you do it this way, you'll make more money.
Mm-hmm.
Wrong, wrong. And they believed me and they did it. And that's why we all ended up in prison.
Mm.
And so, like I told you, I was guilty as heck. I was. When I was sitting down there in solitary confinement for a year, I thought to myself, what would it have been like had I told them to stop? Would they have believed me? Would they have done things differently? And so when I came home, the people that I was around, so people automatically start offering you things that have fallen off the back of a truck, and I'm like, no, don't do that, because doing that, making a couple dollars now, you're going to end up in prison and it's not worth it.
Right.
Right. And so just those little things and me telling people like, hey, maybe there's a better way to do things. And when people started listening to me, I was like, oh, wait a minute, maybe there's something here. So by that time, I really had to walk the walk and talk the talk.
Right.
Yeah, if I was having to talk, I had to walk the walk. And so I think that's what really kept me on the straight and narrow. And people were starting to listen to me. In the photography world, younger photographers would come to me. They would like, I just got this camera, or what camera should I get? What camera is best? And I'm like, the camera that's best is the camera that you have.
Mm-hmm.
Know what you got before you go spending money. And it was little things like that. People started listening. And I was like, with your cell phone, people ask me this all the time. What camera should I get? I'm like, the one that's on your phone. Learn to use the one that's on your phone. I mean, I can shoot a wedding and get clearer quality.
I do a lot from my phone. From my phone. But Cece, you're also known as an expert in another field. You talk about something.
What? Like what?
And it has a lot to do with what Izzy asked you in terms of confidence, because you come across very confident in this interview. But we know from what you've said before, that you may not always feel how you portray yourself, right?
So I will tell you this. Like I told you, I've got stories for everything. So I am Jamaican. My parents are Jamaican. I was born in London. I come from a very big family. And I cannot cook. I'm like the only Jamaican you'll ever meet who cannot cook. I can wash the heck out of dishes, but I cannot cook. And so, I would get together with, my family, stepping in a room with all these gorgeous aunts and what have you, and I can't cook. And I would start to feel like, oh, I'm a fake Jamaican. I'm not really, I've been to prison. I can't cook. I'm not married. So I would get these feelings, which later on I realized was imposter syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
And something just as simple as not being able to cook. Oh my goodness. Yeah, it was giving me nightmares. And so imagine when it's somebody who maybe what we call a first generation immigrant or something like that. And now you have to step into the corporate world when you don't have anybody in your family to ask, what do I do? Or you may be the first one in your business, in your family to start a business, and then you start to feel like, oh my goodness, what am I doing? And don't let there be more month than money.
Yeah.
You're like, oh my goodness, as a Jamaican, I only had one job being a photographer. Everybody else in my family's got 3 jobs, and it's like, so those feelings of imposter syndrome, I talk about a lot because I think that as ex-offenders, we suffer with that, when we come home and we want to start over. And then people are like, you know, you just came home, you've been away for, however long, 6, 7 years, 2 years, or what have you. What do you know? So you start feeling of imposter syndrome.
Right, for sure.
So, how do you help people in your presentations become aware of the imposter syndrome and, better yet, to overcome what you describe as imposter syndrome?
I'm so glad you asked. So one of the things I do is I start having them list all the things that they're good at. Like, can they walk a straight line? Just getting really basic. Like, what do you do well? And then we get to the bigger things, of what they do well. Like, one of the things I do exceptionally well is I make people feel comfortable in a big room. So when I walk into a room, I look around. Anybody that's standing by themselves, that's who I'm going to, because I understand what it feels like to be that person in the room that nobody's talking to. So in my workshops, I start having people identify what they're good at. And then where do they get these feelings of imposter syndrome? Is it around a particular group of people? Like for me, it's with my aunts. I hate the holidays. They always ask me to bring the paper plates.
And the ice.
And the
That's a
ice.
necessity. That's a
I don't know.
necessity.
Right? But
Right.
I'm
Have
like,
you ever been to a feast without a plate?
you
Think
know,
about it.
right?
Think about it.
I'm always that one. And even I have a granddaughter, she's 12. I tried to make something the other day with shredded cabbage and eggs. And she walks in the kitchen, she goes, "You can cook?" And then she gets this look on her face, and then she runs out of the kitchen. I'm thinking she's afraid. No, she runs to get her phone so she can take a video. And I'm like, really? Come on, does everybody know that I can't cook? So is it, I start to ask people, where do they get these feelings? Is it around a certain thing? And I know exactly where my feelings around cooking came from, why I don't like to cook, And I was in the kitchen with my aunts, and my mom. They put me beside a gas stove with flames and feast without a plate. Thank you. I love that. He put me beside an open gas flame, big pots to stir sugar and coconut to make coconut candy. And as I'm stirring it, my mother says, "Don't you do it." I'm like, "Ooh, this looks good." And my mother goes, "Don't you do it." And I'm like, "What?" Like, I'm not doing anything. She turns around and I do it again. And I stick my finger into the hot sugar. It burns me. I scream out, put the hot sugar on my lip.
Mm.
My mother comes over, and you would think she would hug me and comfort me. No, she slapped her. You know what out of me? Everybody starts to laugh. I mean, and so now, years later, I'm in therapy because I cannot cook, and I hate holidays.
So it's
Oh,
not that you can't cook, you're just too traumatized to cook.
I'm
That's
just
what it
trying. Yeah, right.
is.
Oh, you know what? I love Lotus. I love those comments. Sugar bread. Yeah. I mean, I ripped. It was crazy. So yeah.
I did
Yeah.
that with a marshmallow.
Oh
I
gosh.
caught a marshmallow on fire. I was in 6th or 7th grade, and I went to blow it out, and it landed right on my nose.
Oh no.
And of course, your
Oh
first
wow.
instinct is to pull it off. So I pulled all that skin off with my nose. I just couldn't believe that it didn't scar. Yeah,
Wow.
Do you eat marshmallows now? Do you eat
I
marshmallows now?
do. I do. I actually still do. I don't eat them without them being roasted, but I make sure when I blow them out because I still like them burnt that I keep my distance.
So, do you know that because of my experience of that, I do not eat coconut? I cannot stand the taste of coconut.
Mm.
Yeah.
Right. But so, it's like when you say that you feel uncomfortable in a certain situation, say I have people start thinking back, like, why? Why do they feel those feelings? And as we start to unpack it, then we realize that it really doesn't have a basis, and so,
That's
yeah.
right.
Mhm.
That's right.
And
So,
that's very good. And what you just talked about really boils down to what we talk about a lot with From Felon to Fabulous, as well with our other shows within the Becoming the Better You movement. It's the mindset. When you change your mind, things change. And
Mhm.
I love how you were able to be able to change your mind. You became aware of those things. You became aware of those limiting beliefs that was lending to your imposter syndrome. And now you're helping other people do the same thing. You mentioned curriculum in your presentation. So where do you do these type of presentations, and what type of curriculum have you set up for imposter syndrome?
So I do a lot of workshops, seminars. Companies will have me come in to do a presentation on imposter syndrome because I think, not that it's the buzzword right now, but people don't realize that we all suffer from it at some point. And so it's not like a constant thing. It's more like you're going along and look, you experience it and look. So it's not that you have it all the time because when it comes to speaking, I'm very confident. I can get up there and speak. That doesn't bother me. Ask me to go buy eggs in the supermarket. Oh yeah, I need professional help. I need help.
Wow. Well, we love your honesty, and we love your vulnerability on all those things that you've been sharing with us. In the last couple of minutes that we have, we're going to do some round robin. So, Izzy, you got some more questions for our guest, Cece Aspew?
Well, I guess my question is, how do you say your name? Are we saying it right?
Yes. Oh, thank you for asking. So many times people will say my name wrong or pronounce it wrong. And so this is the story that I tell about my name. If you close your eyes and then just say my first name, Cece, it sounds like yes, yes in Spanish. If you didn't know how it was spelled, it sounds like yes, yes in Spanish. My last name is Espew, which in French means it's possible.
Mm.
So I always say, like, what kind of drugs did they give my mother in the hospital? Why she names me that? Yes, yes, it's possible. So
Yes.
I'm willing to try anything because success is always possible. So thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Awesome. I'm glad I asked.
Great answer. Brenda, how about you?
I want to know what's next. What's next for Cece? What's next? Yes, yes.
It's
Yes,
possible.
Thank
it's
you.
possible.
So after I did my second TEDx talk, which was about storytelling, I was like, you know what? I really don't have anything to say on the TEDx stage again. So I stepped back and now I help organize TEDx events. And
Mm.
so I have a TEDx event coming up in June 26th of this year. But there are 4,000 events worldwide every year. So if you ever want to be a TEDx speaker, apply, 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 apply. you know, speakers are chosen 6 to 8 months in advance of an event. So what I do, and there are a lot of us, we, volunteer at the different events and just go around and help out. So that's what I do, and that's what I'm really, really loving. I'm also doing a lot of coaching, speaker coaching, and yeah, that's those are the next best things, big things for me coming up. Yes.
I bet you
love
meet
it.
a lot of really neat people volunteering at those TEDx events.
Let me tell you, it's fascinating.
Mhm.
It's fascinating when you listen to everybody's story. It's like, I'll tell you the one thing. When people go to apply to a TEDx talk, they always start with their credentials. Like, really? Like, God, I hate that. Just imagine we've got 800 applicants for 14 spots. You have to come out first thing on your application. You've got to tell your idea. You've got to tell the story. If you're going to say, my name is CCS Butte, I'm a former U.S. Marine, and like, oh God, like, no, they're not even going to read it because they've got 800 applications. You better come out telling your story or your idea for a speech right off the bat,
Well, that was a great golden nugget. I hope anybody who's listening to this, if you have any interest in a TED Talk, you heard her, go apply. But use your story. Your story is your power. It is your superpower. So own it. Again, love it, embrace it, and let's see where it'll take you.
Right, yeah. This has been so
Wait.
much fun. I hope you guys are having fun because I'm having an incredible amount of fun.
Yeah. As we knew you would. But here's a serious question as we come to the end of the show, because this show is called From Felon to Fabulous. And it was birthed because we know that there are a lot of people who have been the first, but don't think it's possible to be the second. So as we are speaking to you, CC Espew, and your name literally means yes, yes, it's possible. Take a couple of seconds, couple of minutes, and talk to our felons or our formerly incarcerated citizens that are watching live now or going to watch the replay that haven't quite got it yet. They're still living that imposter syndrome that says
You
it's
only
not
have about a
possible.
minute and a half because we're running short. We've
Um,
got to cut off here in a minute.
Okay,
So there
write
you
your
go.
goals down. Write your goals down. Get a mentor. Talk to people. Let them know when you need help. That's exactly what I would say. So that was 30 seconds, Brenda. By the way.
There
That
you
was like-
go. There you go. Well, guys, this has been fun for you guys watching out there. Get in touch with Cece. How can they find you?
They can either come to you or to find me,
Mhm.
or they can find me on LinkedIn under my name, CC Espew. I'm not so much on Facebook, but I will answer you from LinkedIn. And yeah, I'd love to hear from your audience. So thank you. Thank you for having
And she's going to tell you, yes, it's possible for you too. So if you want to get in touch with us or be on the show, go on over to I can't even speak tonight. How about that, Tide? Go on over to From Felon to Fabulous. Fill out that contact form. We will get back with you. We'd love to hear from you. We would love to know what your story is. You can also find me on about anything at Brenda Ringwood. Look me up, look up Isabel, look up Terrence. We are here because we believe that change is real. But first, you got to want it. Thanks for watching, guys. We have a couple commercials to throw up, and stay tuned for another great episode coming next week. And here's another one. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a great evening.
Or do you want to be the person that's helpful, that soothes, that loves? Because you can still stand tall and be as big as you want to be when you are this person.